Right now, the date is set for picking the next pope. We're going to start looking ahead to the conclave and speculate who might be next or the next pontiff. Also, is it better to rent or buy that next roof over your head? We're going to help you maneuver through the rough and rocky housing market. And after being launched into outer space, Katy Perry is now showing off something else that's out of this world. This is The Take. Let's get it. Hello and welcome. I'm Chesley McNeil, and this is The Take, where we go above and beyond the headlines and we look at the why and how stories are impacting you and your community. Experts come in, they share their take on today's top stories and let us know what they're thinking about as well. And we also try to have a little bit of fun. Crowds once again gathered in St. Peter's Square yesterday for a special morning mass remembering Pope Francis. The service was led by the Vatican Secretary of State and marked the second of 9 days of mourning for the late Pope. Sunday's mass also included more than 80,000 young people who were there for a Jubilee of Teenagers, which was already planned by Francis before his death. This came one day after hundreds of thousands of mourners came together for Pope Francis's funeral. Many world leaders were in attendance, including President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump, as well as former President Biden and former First Lady Jill Biden, Dr. Jill Biden. After the Mass, Francis was eventually taken to his burial site, one of the four major papal basilicas in Rome. With Pope Francis now laid to rest, the task of selecting the 267th leader of the Catholic Church is about to begin. Let's bring back in papal expert Susan Reynolds, the interim director of Catholic Studies at Emory University. Welcome back to the show, Susan.
Great to be with you this morning.
All right, let's start off with the funeral, right? Give us your take on how it all played out.
It was a beautiful funeral. I was up at 4 a.m. to watch it live. One of my daughters actually got up with me, and I was so struck by the simplicity, the beauty, and that final procession that his casket took in a retrofitted Pope mobile through the streets of Rome to his final resting place. The simplicity even in that almost pickup truckified Pope mobile, the mourners lining the street with a mix of gratitude and sorrow for the life of this deeply humble, deeply joyful leader who has led the church for 12 years.
Yeah, very nice. Now it's on to picking a new pope, right? We learned just a few hours ago that the conclave will begin next week, May 7th. So walk us through the steps of voting and announcing of the new pope.
That's right, May 7th. So a conclave has to begin between 15 and 20 days after the death of the Pope. Of course, Francis died a week ago today, so it will begin 16 days after Francis's death. The cardinals gather, they take an oath of secrecy in order to protect their deliberations and also to give them that sort of space to deliberate and discern in peace without having to be very responsive to the media and outside forces. They'll take one vote the first evening, and then after that, they'll take 4 votes a day. They vote on a piece of paper, which they fold 2 times and then present to those presiding at the conclave. They're counted aloud in a very dramatic fashion, and in fact, after each one is counted, it's strung onto a string, and then they're burned with a mixture of it. Traditionally, it was wet wood versus dry wood. Black smoke would mean that no cardinal had received a 2/3 vote. White smoke meant that someone had received a 2/3 vote and would be the next pope. And they just take rounds of voting until somebody gets to 2/3.
Quickly, if black smoke comes out, do they stay in until one is selected, or how does that work?
That's right. You can think of this almost as a very high-profile sequestered jury. They have to come to a decision. We've seen conclaves that have taken place over the course of a day. A decision has been raised. We've seen conclaves provided a very long time ago in the 13th century that took 3 years. Now we can be very, very assured that this will not take 3 years. It will probably take well under a week.
Hopefully
but nevertheless, they stay there until they're finished.
Hopefully not 3 years. Now, is it a certain time that smoke comes out, or people watching, obviously they're watching for that smoke. Is there a certain time that they'll do that, or that could come at any time?
It could come at any time after one of those votes. Those votes take place during daylight hours in Rome, during sort of your typical business day. Here it could come in the middle of the night, but there it would come either probably sometime in the morning or sometime in the afternoon.
Gotcha, gotcha. Now, one of the things that we're looking at is the new name of the Pope. Talk about the significance of the name.
Well, traditionally, a pope takes a name after a saint. Francis was the first pope to take the name Francis. He's Francis the First. We have other names that have been taken many, many times, or most recently, not most recently, but in the 1960s, we had John the 23rd. So we could see a John the 24th, or we could see a John Paul the Third, or we could see someone completely new.
Okay, we'll have to wait and see, right? Last week you touched on how many cardinals were picked by Francis. Does this mean that there would be another progressive pontiff like Francis, or could we see something totally different?
We could see something totally different. He appointed about 80% of the voting age cardinals, which is cardinals under the age of 80. But that doesn't mean that they have to be sort of loyal to him or feel loyal. He really globalized the College of Cardinals. And when you're coming from a completely different context, your idea, your understanding of the key issues facing the church and the world could be very different from somebody on the other side of the world. So it's not as simple as sort of liberal versus conservative, and it doesn't guarantee that somebody would necessarily have the same kind of approach that Francis did.
Gotcha. All right. Your thoughts on whether this would be a long conclave or not? I think you may have mentioned it, but again, what do you think?
It's completely impossible to predict. I couldn't even venture a guess.
I understand. We'll be waiting. Hey, we got you on speed dial, so we'll be coming back to you, especially in the coming days. May 7th is when this will begin, so we'll see if it happens on the 8th or some days after. We'll see.
We'll see.
All right. Thanks a lot, Susan. Really appreciate you joining us.
Great to be with you.
All right. Now, we do know there will be some clouds in the sky, at least for today. A couple of clouds. We'll get some sunshine in, though. 77 degrees will be the afternoon high. Keep in mind, 77 is right where we should be for this time of year, but we're going up. Temperatures will be warming up as we head through the week. This week, we're looking at temperatures well into the 80s with the chances for rain around. Now, last week we were unsettled. I think this week, much of the week at least, will be unsettled. Starting tomorrow, low threat for rain, 20% chance. A lot of us will stay dry. 30% chance Wednesday and Thursday, and then a 40% chance as we head into Friday. Got a front that's going to move through the area, and that will clear us out just in time for the weekend. We'll see those temperatures drop off just a little bit, but it will be a nice weekend. 78 on Saturday, Sunday 81 under mostly sunny skies. Don't go anywhere. You're watching The Take, and we're back right after this. All right, welcome back to the show. President Trump is back in the U.S. after Pope Francis' funeral over the weekend, and he's returning with less than favorable poll numbers. Joining us now from Washington, D.C. is NBC's Bianca Fascini. Welcome to the show, Bianca.
Hey, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, so President Trump... Good morning. President Trump has returned stateside after being in Italy for the funeral of Pope Francis, and he's still working on a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. It seems like he's sort of shifting his tone with Russia, though. Meanwhile, back at home, he's approaching the mark of his first 100 days in office amid a falling approval rating, specifically because of economic issues. So it will be really interesting to see how the Trump administration approaches this, especially when he has his first major rally tomorrow in Michigan.
Wow. Yeah. Now, while he was in Rome, he had a meeting with Ukraine's president, and we noticed a noticeable change or shift in the tone. What's behind the change? Do you know?
Yeah, so this is really interesting because President Trump is often criticized for his cozy relationship or seemingly cozy relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Over the weekend, though, he posted on Truth Social, which is his social media platform, questioning whether Putin really wants to end the war in Ukraine at all. And so it seems like he's more Team Zelensky now, which is a very interesting development considering the last in-person meeting that Trump had with Zelensky. This was back in February at the White House. And it was quite a spectacle here in D.C. with, in front of television cameras, sort of felt like a reality television show. So it's not yet clear how Russia will respond to this sort of seemingly change in tone from the president, but it certainly could make things a little bit different for the path forward between Russia and Ukraine. We'll have to see what happens.
All right, we're going to see. All right, deportations and court rulings continue to dominate the headlines. How are these issues impacting Trump's ability to advance parts of his agenda?
Well, this was arguably probably the biggest part of his agenda, right? Immigration. It's not clear whether the Trump administration maybe anticipated some of the roadblocks that they ended up having with some of these mass deportations that they're trying to move ahead with. But I think what's interesting here is that immigration was one of the key issues that really helped Trump win back the White House. It carried him back here to Washington. But despite immigration, despite the fact that he's moving ahead with different immigration policy than the last administration, you see that his approval rating is still low. And that's because a lot of Americans still feel economically insecure because inflation remains stubborn. And now a lot of Americans are worried about the tariff policy and what it might mean for inflation and potentially empty shelves in the stores to come. So this could be a significant challenge for the administration, even if they are successful with some of their campaign promises and can say that they have been successful and carried through on those promises. The economy and tariffs are really going to be a big lift for them in order to change Americans' minds, because the recent NBC News polling shows that Trump is in trouble with voters.
All right. Thanks a lot, Bianca. Really appreciate you joining us. Thanks for your insight today as well. All right, other headlines for you on this Monday. An Uber driver has been taken into custody after police say he reportedly shot a passenger over a fare dispute at Atlantic Station. The victim was taken to the hospital and is expected to be okay. Atlantic Station is a busy and popular place with restaurants, shops, and apartments. All right, growing reaction to the apology Atlanta Falcons issued about a prank on quarterback Shedeur Sanders. The son of Falcons defensive coordinator, was involved in a fake calling posing as the New Orleans Saints general manager. That led Shedeur to believe he was going to be drafted by the Saints. 20-year-old Jack Ubrick said that what he did was inexcusable, shameful, and childish. He apologized for taking away Shedeur's special moment there. Atlanta's own Outkast will be looking so fresh and so clean in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The duo is making history as one of the South's first rap acts to earn the honor, and says this is a big win for hip hop. Joining them this year in the Hall of Fame includes Chubby Checker, Soundgarden, Cyndi Lauper, Salt and Pepper, and the White Stripes. All right. You know, it said there's no place like home, but a new study is showing that it's maybe cheaper to rent that place than to buy it. Bankrate found the national average monthly mortgage payment, including property tax and home insurance, is slightly less than $2,800. That's compared to the national average monthly rent of about $2,000. Looking at the metro area, Metro Atlanta, both figures are lower than the national average, but the cost to rent remains more than $600 a month cheaper than it is to buy. Here to make sense of all those figures is real estate broker Danielle Andrews, who's familiar with the Metro Atlanta market when it comes to buying homes. Danielle, welcome back to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
All right, so give us your take on those numbers. Any of that surprise you at all, those numbers?
No, it doesn't. I mean, when you're looking at national averages, we're taking into account places like California, New York, so that of course is going to skew the numbers. And then just kind of naturally, because renting focuses on the now versus long-term like ownership. So it may be more naturally appealing just by number sense to rent rather than own.
It's a pretty sizable gap though. Has it always been that way?
No. So, of course, it's going to continue to climb, especially in some areas where you see, for example, like a state of New Jersey, where their property taxes are drastically more than in Georgia and Florida or anywhere in the South. And so if you're nationally averaging something, you're going to see a gap that takes us over. And even when we talk about Georgia and the metro Atlanta area, the gap is much smaller, but it will still continue to rise because renting just always rises.
This is where my son is right now, I got to tell you. And so me and his mom tried to urge him that buying would be better because you're kind of buying to own something rather than renting. Is that what your advice you're giving out, or do you think the renting is smart right now?
Absolutely. I'm always going to advocate for home ownership. I do think the answer is personal and isn't one size fits all. But again, it's an investment towards your future and a return. When you rent, you may get your security deposit back at the end, but you have nothing to show for it other than positive rental history. Whereas that ownership is a monthly deposit into your equity, and it's like a home savings account.
All right, the Atlanta market seems to be expanding at a rapid rate. Looks like a lot of folks are interested in maybe looking at homes. Does this make it easier for you as a broker?
I mean, we still are seeing a very popular and active market in the Metro Atlanta and surrounding areas across the country. You know, we're seeing satisfaction and confidence in homeownership go up, feeling a little more stable and not, you know, so fluid when it comes to economic aspects. So yes, the demand is there, and especially in the spring and the summer.
Well, the rates, right? The rates may be dropping, right? Would you advise people to wait for now, maybe rent for a year, then wait for the rates to drop and then buy? What's your advice?
That is so funny. It's always something we're coming across. And I would say you want to buy when it financially makes sense. I wouldn't try to time the market or expect any sort of drastic, especially those pandemic 2% and 3% rates. We've pretty much seen rates stabilize between the 6 to 7s. And so if that's comfortable for you, it's affordable, and it gets you that step forward, take the first step. Don't wait.
So we're not going back down to those 2% and 3% rates?
Let that go. It is definitely a thing of the past. If you didn't strike while it was hot, that opportunity is gone. I'm sorry.
Oh, man. Lastly, real quick, what do you tell buyers that are preparing to buy a home? What should they be doing?
Absolutely. They should be looking at their budget and make a practice of, especially if you're going to increase. If you're paying $2,000 a month for rent and are going to jump to $2,800 in a mortgage, for example, start practicing that now. Set aside that extra $800. Get comfortable with that, because at most it's going to be your new mortgage payment. At next best, it's additional savings that you can have for homeownership emergencies.
Gotcha. All right. Danielle Andrews, thanks so much for joining us and give us that insight. Hopefully my son was watching so we can hear all that great advice you were giving.
Thank you.
It takes a village, you know. Thank you so much. All right, folks, don't go anywhere. Plenty more stories for you. This is The Take on 11Alive Plus. We're back right after this. Welcome back to the show. What began as a dream rental for one Smyrna couple quickly spiraled into a struggle for accountability. The couple tells 11Alive their home looked picture perfect until they stepped into the backyard and they found broken glass and buried debris, starting a frustrating process to get it all cleaned up. 11Alive consumer investigative reporter Liza Lucas joins us now. And Liza, you talk about broken glass and stuff buried in the backyard. Sounds like safety issues. Did the landlord respond at all?
Good morning, Chesley. Well, not the way that they had hoped. After initially asking for help, Patrick Colson Price tells me that the property was transferred to one of Metro Atlanta's largest landlords. We're talking about Invitation Homes. Some of you may be familiar if you're watching. And he reached out to us after struggling to get a response from the company. Take a listen.
Someone says they will call me back. No one calls. Emails will go unanswered. I've had to go up to the Invitation Homes offices twice to even get someone to answer a phone call. But, you know, we feel helpless. We feel like, you know, we're paying the rent. We're paying the money.
We want to give you a little glimpse of what we're talking about here. This is the side yard of the home when I visited because we wanted to see it for ourselves. I was also collecting the glass. Every couple of steps you would see it, and every time it rains, Patrick says they just unearth more of them. Now, Patrick also says he would file the work requests, but then some of those work orders would get canceled, or vendors would get sent out to the property to check out the job, but then the work would not be completed. This is a pattern, Chesley, that we have been hearing from other residents too. So definitely not isolated.
So yeah, so it's not an isolated thing here. And you got more people experiencing the same thing?
Exactly. I've been talking to a few families now, and we've been also tracking the data. So as we've been talking to them, we're trying to get a sense of how this maintenance process works. They try to get these maintenance issues fixed, and they repeatedly reach out through the tenant portal for help. Then I also spoke with a local attorney in our story who represents her own clients who've been trying to get answers from Invitation Homes, and she echoed also a lot of what 11Alive has been hearing.
It takes Invitation Homes a long time to respond to their maintenance requests. Clients often have issues with water leaking, whether they have a basement or a foundation. They'll have carpets ruined, flooring ruined. They'll have mold build up because Invitation Homes just takes weeks, sometimes in some cases months, to respond or send a repair crew out to look at the problem and to fix the problem. Sometimes they'll send people out to look at it, and then they won't send anybody back to fix it for days and days and days.
So, Liza, is this one of those big companies, those huge companies?
Yes, we're talking about a corporate landlord here. Invitation Homes has huge reach in the metro. They operate more than 12,000 rental properties in the Atlanta area alone. They've been acquiring these single-family homes here in Atlanta for more than a decade, back to 2012. Now, some of those unhappy renters, they have turned to the Federal Trade Commission for help, and data we obtained shows more than 1,000 complaints were filed against Invitation Homes statewide in the last 3 years.
So who's holding them accountable?
Well, there was an FTC settlement, $48 million settlement with the company last fall. You may remember that made a lot of headlines because, again, this company has huge reach, not only in the Atlanta area, but across the country. Now, in our story, the couple's persistence got the attention of code enforcement, and then their complaints triggered a citation. Now, the couple in this case is actually planning to move when their lease is up regardless, but they also wanted to speak out, Chesley, so that the next tenants don't walk into this exact same situation.
Wow, I mean, that's dangerous, especially now. Do they have any pets?
They do, 2 dogs, so you can imagine how scary that is. And one of the little dogs got their paws cut one time.
That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So the company is now being cited by, you said by who now?
By the city of Smyrna in this particular case, but they've got homes in Mableton and Lawrenceville and Stone Mountain and Roswell and on and on and on.
Wow.
I'm talking to a DeKalb teacher right now in Stone Mountain who's been trying to get some help. Another family, a tree fell on their property back in February, and they've been going around and around trying to get permits and work done. You know, this is frustrating when you own your own home and sometimes there is a holdup, but when then you're continuing to pay that rent, you expect that communication, and the communication issues really seem to be the core of what these tenants are frustrated about.
Got it. Liza Lucas, thank you for being all over it. We'll be checking back in with you to see if some just due is being done here with this company. Thanks so much. All right, you can check out Liza's full investigation report tonight on 11 Live News at 11. You can also watch it right here on 11 Live. Plus, we also got a breakdown of what to do if you're facing a similar issue as far as rental issues like this. You don't want to miss it, folks. All right, we're back with my final take right after this. All right, 7-day outlook shows that we'll be warming up as we head through the week. It's going to remain a little unsettled as well. We're not anticipating any rain today. Small threat for Tuesday, by Wednesday, Thursday, up to a 30% chance, 40% chance to round out the work week with temperatures well into the 80s, and then we'll cool down and clear out over the upcoming weekend. All right, Katy Perry and a few others caught a little flack for being a part of that Origin Blue flight to outer space earlier this month. Many fans feeling like the pop star didn't deserve that flight because she's not a scientist. Now the singer seems to be not catching a breath break for doing what she's known for. Katy Perry opened up her Lifetime's tour with a space-inspired outfit that fans were less than impressed about. Fans commented on social media saying, who does she think she is, Optimus Prime? And is this what happens to you when you go out of space and back? Well, to all that, Perry simply replied that, has anyone ever called your dreams crazy? Well, I tend to agree with her. If you had an opportunity to do something once in a lifetime chance, wouldn't you do it as well? Less than 10 days after her little short stint in outer space, she comes back and decides to celebrate with a spacesuit of what she calls the second greatest experience in her life, second to becoming a mom. Let her live, y'all. Let her live. One day, perhaps we and I will be able to go out of space, and we don't want anybody to comment about what we do, right? That's all we got for you today, folks. Try to encourage someone, would you? Have a great day.